I remember the question marks were the prominent, you'd see them floating around town. Like David Ortega, who I became really close with, and till he passed away, you know, he was one of the early question marks. And, you know, I became a Hell's Angel in 1976. He'd already been a question mark for 10, 12, 15 years, you know. He was right on the ground floor. Went to San Quentin for marijuana possession. A very hardcore, not only biker, but he had a real strict set of rules. And he was also one of the toughest guys I ever ran across. And it was incredible. You know? Just hanging out with him and meeting him. My first encounter with him, I was on a Liberty from the Marine Corps in 1966. And he accused me of being a cop because of my hair and whatnot. And, you know, I thought we were going to throw blows. And this guy, Bird, took me over to his house. And Bird was hanging around the question marks too, good friend of mine. You know, back then they had a misconception. You could ask somebody if they were a cop, and he had to tell you, yes, I'm a police officer, you know. So David says, are you a cop? And I go, fuck no, I'm not a cop, I'm a Marine. He goes, oh, you're a Marine? And he goes, you get high? And I go, well, this Marine does. And, you know, he rolled a big joint and we smoked it out in the alley in Oxnard. And, you know, I didn't see him for a couple of years. I went back in the Marines and he went to San Quentin.
Many are ready for their oath, sir.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me the oath of enlistment.
I, Robert E.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
Do solemnly swear.
I took the oath in 1965. I was 17 years old. And in 1966, February, I left for a Marine Corps boot camp. What I learned from the Marines was never give up. And also, you can do anything you put your mind to. That's what they instill in you as a Marine, a young Marine. But when I was in, it was 65. There was still a lot of violence from the drill instructors. Physically, they were getting physical with the boots or recruits, whatever you want to call them. And that all came to a halt when the Marine Corps started drafting individuals to go to Vietnam. The Marine Corps was strictly a volunteer military group until probably 66, maybe 65. I don't remember what year, but they started drawing from the draft. And prior to that, anybody going in the Marines knew pretty much what they were getting themselves into. But suddenly you've got people getting inducted in the Army, getting pulled out to become a United States Marine, and they weren't prepared for what was going to happen. There was a lot of physical contact. I got hit in the head with the drill instructor, slammed my rifle into the side of my head, you know, for not being in step during, you know, our cadence calling and, you know, platoon drilling and whatnot. They want you to be an individual, but they want you to work as one unit as well. They want you to think individually, but not too individually. They want you to still be in that group and be part of a machine. And, you know, they really make you think you can do anything. And I watched people change before my very eyes. You know, people would come in there and they'd seem weak and not quite sure of themselves. You know, when they left boot camp, they were Marines. If they got that Marine Corps diploma from boot camp, they were indeed Marines. And it was a sight to see some of these guys. And from there, I went up to Camp Pendleton. I was at Marine Corps Recruit Depot. You know, on the first day you get there, you ride down on the bus, and it's kind of a scary feeling. You know, all of a sudden you're in a military situation, a military setting. The drill instructor gets on the bus and just starts screaming and yelling at you, telling you to get off the fucking bus and get on the yellow footprints. Well, by design, there's not enough yellow footprints for everybody that's on the bus. So what happens is people start fighting for those yellow footprints. And that's when you get your first introduction to this is going to be really, really physical. And, you know, there's some humor to it too. It's some of us had joined up in the buddy system. They were separating us. And, you know, the guys that were stupid enough to question the drill instructors because they wound up getting beat up. But they said, hey, wait a minute, we're all supposed to be together. We came on the buddy system. And the remark was, did you come down on the bus together? Yeah, well, that's as far as it goes. And they got to knocking heads, slapping people, and then they bring you in. And you get that haircut, man. They just cut your hair off in about 30 seconds. And, then you get pack your clothes up, you send them home. And, it's a metaphor for saying goodbye to civilian life because you're packing all those belongings in a little box and you're putting your address on them and you just watch it go away. And that's the end of your civilian lifestyle. You're now a United States Marine recruit, not a Marine recruit. And they drill that into you. You're no good, you're nothing. We're going to make something out of you. And boot camp, did you ever see Full Metal Jacket? It was like that with a lot of violence directed from the drill instructors. And I got hit a few times. I got smashed in the head with my rifle. Got in a fight with another platoon, which really turned out to be a blessing in disguise because I got hit in the head with a M14, the butt of an M14, for stepping on the platoon next to us. I stepped on their dirt and left a footprint. I didn't even know I had done it. And I started fighting these guys, and I was getting the best of the one guy, and then somebody ran up and hit me on the side of the head with their butt of their rifle and knocked me down. And then they had to call a medic, and I was fucked up. I had to get stitches in my head. And they asked me how it happened, and I said that I had hit my head getting out of the rack. I was on the bottom bunk, and I hit my head on the frame of the rack on top of me. And that was my story, and I was sticking with it. And, it really opened a lot of doors for me with the platoon sergeants. They weren't any easier on me, but they all knew what happened. And the provost marshal was trying to get me to rat out the other platoon, and I wouldn't do it. And the drill instructor from the other platoon came, and they called me in the duty hut. I thought they were going to beat the shit out of me or something. And basically what they told me was, this is what Marines are made of. And hole in your mud. From there, we went to Camp Pendleton and started the advanced combat training. This was a whole different ballgame. We were now Marines officially, and we were learning, how to use all the weapons, learning how to, make explosives, out of plastica, learn how to use dynamite, learn how to shoot flamethrowers, machine guns, rocket launchers, anything that you could think of, we were going through. They had a simulated prisoner of war camp where, if you got into that, they'd beat the shit out of you. There was a lot of controversy going on because of the people that had been drafted into the Marines. One of the guys got beat up real bad. His father was a congressman or something. And there was a big investigation. Some of the drill instructors they wound up in the brig, for the violence and whatnot. But, I was there, I was committed, and I was introduced to a whole new way of life. I came from an old traditional Greek family, only child, and suddenly I'm in a group of people that are being taught to kill people, and it gives you a whole different, philosophy on life. People were going to Vietnam, people getting killed over there.
Duck and cover. Be sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing. That's what this film is all about. Duck and cover.
My generation, we had gone through elementary school, high school, getting under desks, watching atomic bomb, this is what happens when an atomic bomb goes off. So, whether you're consciously scared or on a subconscious level, I mean, people are thinking this could end at any minute. There was so much political unrest that you're almost forced to take a side. You either were for the establishment or against the establishment. And, that's where they came up with that slogan, the silent majority, where there was a lot of people that weren't voicing their opinion. And, I came home, I got married to my high school sweetheart. And for me, it wasn't happening. I mean, I love my wife. I love my daughter, Mariah, later became my lifesaver many times, my attorney. But I needed something else. And I was looking, the American dream for me the worm had turned in a sense. It wasn't the American dream that they had been shoving down my throat. My American dream was, I wanted to be an outlaw. I wanted to be a modern day Jesse James or Billy the Kid or, I mean, that was my America for me. I mean, I didn't want these fences around me. I didn't give a shit about that job, but I did it because I had a family, and that's the catch, and that's how they get people into the grind. You get the car and the 1.4 kids or whatever it is, and, you start getting those bills, and, you don't start thinking about freedom of the road. You don't start thinking about making my mark in this world. You start thinking about making ends meet, putting food on that family's table. So it's a hook, if you will. They hook you into it. And, I bought it for several years, and there was a lot of people that I was taking orders from that I didn't have any respect for. And that was my biggest problem in the Marines. I had gotten a situation with a drill instructor. He kept trying to bully me, and I kept warning him to leave me alone. And kind of all came to a head. We had been on a ship for 3 days. We were getting ready to do an amphibious landing. They hadn't done one in years. They were going to do an amphibious landing in Vietnam, and we were practicing for it. And when we came on the beach, the umpire said he was killed. So they took him out of the game, and I harassed him, and I talked shit to him, and so then we went on into Camp Pendleton. We did a 50-mile march. We went part of the way in a helicopter, and then we had to do a landing, military combat landing, and then we marched and marched and marched, and we had all these situations, combat situations simulated, and then we made it back around, and he continued to harass me, and I warned him, and I felt he put me in a situation that I couldn't avoid. We were on the rifle range, we were standing, qualifying, and he just kept on and kept on and kept on, and I cleared told the people to get off the range, and I put, my rifle to my side like a sidearm, and I told him to draw, and I don't know what would have happened if he had. I just knew he was full of shit. And after I called a gunnery sergeant out, I got activated. I was reserved. They activated me. I became an active military Marine. And I went down to Camp Pendleton, and they started testing me. They said, we're going to send you over to Long Beach. And I went over to Long Beach, and I got evaluated. And then with something odd, the guy says, go home, and that's your orders. Wait for orders. Go to your home. They had my address in Camarillo. And they said, go home and wait for your orders. 2 Navy intelligence guys showed up at my door, and they started talking to me. And, I don't know if anybody has ever talked to these Navy intelligence guys or military intelligence, but they kind of talk in circles. They wanted to know about drug use in the military, and I wouldn't give them any information. They knew the platoon I was in was divided in half. Half the platoon got high, the other half didn't. Perfect example, we're on war games at Camp Pendleton, and the platoon sergeant calls up to our squad, and he says, okay, we want you guys to come down and overtake this hill, and We're going, hey, man, we're all loaded on acid. We can't take the hill. Go to the other squad. Go to squad 2. Those guys don't get high, you know. And I had mentioned earlier, Blinky was my platoon sergeant, an old surfer friend who's in the Shapers Hall of Fame. You know, it was Blinky, you know. You know, Blinky reminded me of I had all these crazy things we did. And they knew where we were coming from. You know, we were coming back on maneuvers one time, and I kept telling the driver to pull over. I got to go to the bathroom. And they wouldn't pull over. So I took a rocket launcher and pissed in it, and it went out the back of the truck. You know, it was spraying all over everybody on the freeway. But we were a bunch of rowdy Marines, you know. I mean, after I did it, everybody did it, you know. And so these guys kind of knew where we were coming from. But these intelligence officers are talking in circles, and one of them says, you know, they're looking for people for the Department of Defense. So, you know, the light goes on. I'm a communications expert. So I go out there, I apply, I get the job, and the next thing you know, I got a top level security clearance. I'm going to San Nicolas Island, Santa Cruz Island. On Santa Cruz Island, there's a submarine surveillance station there. We're in a Cold War with Russia, and my job is to keep that installation up and make sure no subs sneak in on Southern California. You know, every political move imaginable was taking place in Washington. You know, you had the people for the war, people against the war. You had the political candidates for it, political candidates against it. And, you know, we were all pawns. First of all, it's something out of your control. So you just kind of have to acquiesce to it. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself really aggravated. But what I learned, and I used it later as a Hell's Angel, especially as a Hell's Angel leader, started watching the political arena, and you could get a feel for what was going to go on. You know, you could see if we were going to get activated, where we were going to go. And I think one of the main reasons we didn't get activated, and I can't prove this, but I think one of the main reasons we never got activated was because the political unrest in the United States. And I think they didn't know if the country was going to just be chaotic. And I think they wanted units back here in case the people revolted. I mean, there were heroes coming back from the war that were throwing their medals and, you know, talking about anti-war stuff. And I think everybody had an opinion, and a lot of them, especially the politicians, they didn't know a damn thing that was going on. I think there were people over there early on that realized that we weren't going to win that war, but they politically and maybe emotionally couldn't accept how these people, their main source of income was rice fields, how they could beat the United States of America, you know. And it's you know, it's amazing. When I was at Camp Pendleton, they were bringing the Vietnamese over, and they had a Vietnam village where everyone was living. It was a tent city, and they were trying to politically change their views about communism and whatnot. And a lot of the old sergeants and whatnot were really upset about it because they said they were bringing them over here, training them with our tactics, and then taking them back to Vietnam, and they were going back to the VC, you know. And so it was a lot of controversy, a lot of things going on. And I learned a lot about politics, that you could watch what was going on in Washington and get a feel for the atmosphere of the country. And later, I used that as a Hell's Angel leader. I could see what was going on. I could read the newspaper headlines and who's getting funding for this, what's going on here. It's just like when the writing on the wall, when they got RICO'd up in San Francisco in 1979, 80, I forget what it was. You know, Mueller, the same guy that went after Trump, was heading that deal. And You know, we talked about Big Al earlier, but, you know, it was a fiasco. That was just it was a dog and pony show. But you could see where it was heading, and then you could see the aftermath of it.